I never imagined burying my son. Parents aren't supposed to outlive their children. That's what everyone kept saying at the funeral. As if those words could somehow fill the hollowness inside me. The First Presbyterian Church of Bridgeport, Connecticut, was packed. Michael had been well liked, a bright 32-year-old investigative journalist with the Hartford Courier. His articles had exposed corruption in local government, unveiled environmental violations by corporations, and most recently, he'd been working on something big, something he wouldn't even tell me about. "Just be careful," I'd told him during our last phone call 3 weeks ago. "Always am, Dad," he'd replied with that confident laugh I'd heard since he was a teenager. "But this one's going to change things." Now I stood in my black suit, shaking hands with strangers and colleagues who knew my son better than I did. His mother couldn't make it. Sarah had passed 5 years ago. Cancer. Michael had been our only child. "He was a credit to journalism," said a tall woman who introduced herself as Michael's editor. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "We're conducting our own investigation into the accident. The brake failure seems convenient." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The police had ruled it an accident. Michael's car had gone off Route 8 during a rainstorm. Brake failure, they said. But Michael had been meticulous about car maintenance, something I'd drilled into him since he got his first vehicle at 17. "Mr. Sullivan," a soft voice interrupted my thoughts. A young woman with copper hair pulled into a tight bun stood before me. She didn't offer her name. "I worked with Michael. I'm so sorry." She hugged me briefly, and as she pulled away, I felt something slip into my jacket pocket. Before I could question her, she disappeared into the crowd. After the service, I couldn't face the reception. I drove home to my empty house in Fairfield, loosened my tie, and collapsed into my recliner. That's when I remembered the object in my pocket. A sealed envelope, plain white, no markings. Inside was a single sheet of paper with typewritten words. "He knew too much. Protect yourself." Below it, a series of numbers. 04, 17, 22, 39, 11. My hands trembled. What was this? A threat? A warning? Michael had mentioned nothing about danger, but journalists made enemies. The brake failure suddenly felt less like an accident. I tried calling the newspaper, asking for the copper-haired woman, but no one seemed to know who I was talking about. "We don't have anyone matching that description," the receptionist insisted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Michael's last project. He'd been excited but secretive. "This goes deeper than you'd believe," he'd said. The next morning, I started going through Michael's possessions. The police had returned his personal effects, his wallet, keys, phone with a cracked screen. The phone was password protected. After 3 failed attempts, I set it aside. I drove to his apartment in Hartford. The landlord let me in with a sympathetic nod. He was a good tenant, quiet, paid on time. Michael lived simply, books everywhere, a worn couch, a desk with a laptop. The laptop was missing. "The police took it," the landlord explained when I asked. I searched methodically. Closets, drawers, under the mattress. Nothing seemed out of place or suspicious until I checked the air vent in the hallway. Taped inside was a USB drive. Back home, I plugged it into my computer. It contained a single encrypted file, password protected. I tried the numbers from the note, 04, 17, 22, 39, 11. Access denied. I tried Michael's birthday, his mother's birthday, my birthday. Nothing worked. Then I remembered the numbers on the spines of the books he always kept on his nightstand. Classics our family had passed down through generations. I'd given him 5 volumes when he graduated journalism school. I tried again, 4 to 17, 22, 39, 11. The file opened. Inside were hundreds of documents, emails, and photographs. A massive investigation into Nexus Pharmaceuticals, headquartered right here in Connecticut. The company had been testing a new drug. Documents showed they'd covered up serious side effects, including several deaths. At the bottom of the file list was a video. Michael's face appeared on screen, looking tired but determined. "Dad," he began, "if you're watching this, something's happened to me. The information I've gathered is all here. Nexus has people everywhere. Police, government. Trust no one. There's one person you can contact. The video cut off abruptly. I sat in stunned silence as the screen went dark, the last image of my son's face burning into my mind. Then I heard it, the subtle creak of a floorboard from the hallway outside my study. Someone was in my house. I froze, my hand hovering over the mouse. Years of working construction had taught me to recognize the distinct sound of weight on old wood. My house was built in the 1960s. The floors spoke their own language. That wasn't the usual settling of an empty home. Silently, I ejected the USB drive and slipped it into my pocket. I turned off the monitor, but left the computer running. Then I reached for the baseball bat I kept beside my desk, a relic from Michael's high school days, when he'd made All-State his senior year. The hallway was dark. I'd neglected to turn on lights when I came home, too focused on what I'd found. Now that carelessness might save me. I pressed my back against the wall, listening. Another creak. Kitchen. Whoever it was, they weren't being particularly stealthy. Either they thought I wasn't home, or they didn't care if I heard them. I moved through the shadows of my own house, bat ready. When I reached the kitchen entrance, I saw a beam of light sweeping across my counters. A flashlight. The refrigerator door opened, casting a rectangle of light that illuminated a tall figure in dark clothes. This wasn't a simple burglary. Thieves don't check refrigerators. I stepped back, planning my exit. The back door was closer, but it squeaked horribly. The front door was quieter, but meant crossing more open space. My decision was made for me when my phone buzzed loudly in my pocket. The figure spun around, flashlight beam landing directly on me. "Mr. Sullivan," a male voice said calmly. "We need to talk about your son." I didn't wait to hear more. I swung the bat, connecting with the flashlight. It clattered to the floor, the beam spinning wildly across walls and ceiling as I bolted for the front door. Outside, the night air hit my lungs like a shock. I ran to my truck, fumbling with the keys. As I pulled away from the curb, I saw the figure emerge from my house. In my rearview mirror, I watched him speak into what looked like a radio. My mind raced as I drove aimlessly through Fairfield's quiet streets. Who was in my house? Police, Nexus Security, some other player I didn't even know about. I needed somewhere safe. A motel would require ID. Friends might be watched. Then I remembered my brother-in-law's fishing cabin near Candlewood Lake. He'd given me a key years ago, said I should use it any time. No one would connect me to that place. 2 hours later, I sat at a dusty table in the dark cabin, using the dim light of my phone to examine the USB contents more carefully. Michael's investigation was thorough. Clinical trials where patients had developed severe cardiac issues, emails discussing how to adjust the data, photographs of internal memos, directing employees to destroy certain records. The most damning evidence was a spreadsheet tracking resolution payments, hush money to families of victims, all disguised as research grants or medical compensation funds. I scrolled through the names of people who had allegedly died from this drug's side effects. 17 deaths, all covered up with the help of bought doctors, lawyers, and apparently government officials. One name jumped out at me: Senator William Hargrove, chairman of the Health Committee. According to Michael's notes, Hargrove had received over $2 million in campaign contributions from Nexus subsidiaries. I checked Michael's call logs that he'd saved. Multiple calls to a number listed only as DW. The last call was 3 days before his death. The video fragment troubled me most. Michael knew he was in danger. He'd prepared for the worst. But who was the one person I could trust? The video had cut off before he could tell me. My phone rang, startling me so badly I nearly dropped it. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, a text message appeared. "Mr. Sullivan, this is Detective Wilcox, Hartford PD. We need to discuss your son's case. Please call." I didn't recognize the name. Was this the DW from Michael's contacts, or a trap? Another text followed. "Your house is being watched. The cabin isn't safe either. They know about Sarah's brother." My blood ran cold. How did this person know where I was? I moved to the window, carefully peering out at the dark woods surrounding the cabin. Nothing moved in the moonlight, but that didn't mean I was alone. I texted back, "Who are you?" The response came immediately. The copper-haired woman from the funeral, Diana Wilcox. I worked with Michael undercover, not on the force anymore. He trusted me. "Prove it," I typed. The reply took longer this time. When it came, my hands started shaking. Michael had a scar on his right elbow from falling out of the treehouse when he was 9. He told me his mom put Batman band-aids on it, and he was more excited about that than upset about the fall. It was true. So specific, so personal, something only Michael would have shared. "Where can we meet?" I asked. "There's a 24-hour diner off I-84, exit 23, Max's, 1 hour. Come alone, park in back." I gathered the USB drive and my few belongings. As I stepped onto the porch, headlights suddenly swept across the trees at the end of the dirt driveway. Someone had found me after all. I ducked back inside the cabin, heart hammering against my ribs. The headlights grew brighter as the vehicle approached. Through a crack in the curtains, I watched a black SUV stop about 50 yards from the cabin. 2 men in dark suits stepped out. The fishing cabin had 2 exits, the front door and a back window that opened onto a short drop to the ground. I chose the window, easing it open as quietly as possible. The night was cool and damp as I lowered myself to the ground. Behind the cabin was nothing but woods stretching toward the lake. I'd spent summers here with Sarah years ago. I knew these woods well enough. I moved between trees, keeping low. Behind me, flashlight beams swept the cabin's interior, then shouts. They'd discovered I was gone. I picked up my pace, heading northeast toward a service road I knew ran parallel to the property about a quarter-mile through the woods. If I could reach it without being spotted, I might be able to flag down a passing car, or at least put more distance between us. The forest floor was soft, with decades of fallen pine needles muffling my footsteps, a blessing, until I stepped on a branch that cracked like a gunshot in the silence. I froze. Behind me, voices called out. They'd heard. Abandoning stealth for speed, I ran. Branches whipped at my face. My foot caught on an exposed root, nearly sending me sprawling, but I caught myself against a tree trunk. The service road appeared ahead, just a dirt track used by the power company to access lines. No cars in sight. I turned right, staying in the tree line while following the road. After 20 minutes of alternating between jogging and walking, I spotted headlights approaching slowly. I pressed myself against a tree, unsure if this was salvation or danger. An old pickup truck came into view, moving cautiously on the uneven road. As it drew closer, I caught a glimpse of copper hair. I stepped onto the road, hands raised. The truck stopped. Diana Wilcox leaned across the seat and pushed open the passenger door. "Get in, quickly!" I climbed in, and she accelerated before I'd even closed the door. "They're using your phone to track you," she said, eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. "Did you bring it?" I nodded, pulling it from my pocket. "Turn it off. Take out the battery if you can." Her voice was calm but urgent. After I dismantled the phone, she handed me a burner phone. "Use this, if necessary. I've already programmed my number." We drove in silence for several miles before I found my voice. "You were working with Michael, undercover?" She nodded. "I was Hartford PD for 12 years. Transferred to major crimes 4 years ago. Started investigating Nexus after a pattern of overdoses seemed connected to their new pain medication, Nurofen." "But Michael was a journalist," I said. "We met when he was covering a different story. He had sources I couldn't access. I had information he couldn't get. We started sharing notes." She paused. It became more than professional. The implication hung in the air. My son had never mentioned a relationship, but then again, we'd grown apart since Sarah died. "The department pulled me off the case 3 months ago. Said it was jurisdictional issues, but I knew better. Someone had gotten to my captain. I turned in my badge rather than drop it. And Michael kept going," I said quietly. Her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "I told him it was too dangerous. Nexus has people everywhere. Judges, cops, FDA officials. But he wouldn't stop. He said, her voice caught, he said people were dying and no one else was going to speak for them. We pulled into the parking lot of a roadside motel, not Maxie's diner as she'd texted. Change of plans, she explained. This is safer. Inside a sparse but clean room, Diana spread out printouts from her own investigation, filling in gaps in Michael's research. The full picture was worse than I'd imagined. Nexus knew their drug caused heart failures in about 3% of patients, she explained. But it was poised to make billions, so they buried the data, bribed officials, and went to market anyway. And Michael found proof, I said. Yes, but he needed one more thing. The original clinical trial data showing they knew about the deaths before approval. He found a whistleblower inside Nexus willing to provide it. Did he get it? Diana nodded grimly. The night before he died. The implication hit me like a physical blow. They killed him for it. The brake lines in his car were professionally cut. Clean job. Would look like failure under stress. I thought of the numbers from the note. 0417 to 22 39 11. Do you know what these mean? Diana studied them. Those aren't just numbers, that's a date and time. April 17th, 22 39 11. Military time with seconds. That's tomorrow night, I realized. Michael was methodical. If he left these numbers, they're significant. She opened her laptop. Let's check his calendar. And we found it. An entry for 10:39 p.m. the next day. Just one word. Marina. Bridgeport Marina, Diana said immediately. He had a contact there, security guard who moonlighted at Nexus corporate events, perfect for gathering information. So we go there tomorrow, I said. Diana looked me straight in the eyes. This is dangerous, Robert. These people killed your son. They won't hesitate to kill you too. He was my boy, I said simply. If this is what got him killed, I need to finish it. The next night, we waited in shadows at the marina. At exactly 10:39, a security guard appeared, nervously looking around before approaching a specific boat slip, number 411. Inside the storage locker on the dock was a waterproof case. Inside that, a hard drive and notarized testimony from Nexus's former chief medical officer, detailing years of deliberate data manipulation and cover-up that had led to at least 23 deaths. Diana contacted her former partner, the one person in the department she still trusted. Within 48 hours, federal agents raided Nexus headquarters. The story broke nationally. Senator Hargrove announced his immediate resignation. 3 Nexus executives were arrested, along with 2 FDA officials and a detective from Hartford PD. 6 months later, I stood at Michael's grave, placing fresh flowers beside the headstone. Diana stood respectfully a few steps back. He changed things, I said quietly, just like he promised. The class action lawsuit against Nexus was proceeding. The drug had been pulled from the market. Lives had been saved. I placed my hand on the cool marble of his headstone. I'm proud of you, son. As Diana and I walked back to the car, my phone buzzed with news alerts. Another pharmaceutical company was facing scrutiny after suspicious patterns emerged in their trial data. The Michael Sullivan Foundation, funded by my portion of the settlement, had hired former industry insiders to analyze drug trial data for inconsistencies. My son was gone, but his work continued. His legacy was protection for others. It wouldn't bring him back, but it gave meaning to what happened. Some truths demand a price. Michael paid it. The least I could do was make sure it wasn't in vain.